Kylian Mbappe is one of the best players I have ever seen in the history of the earth, and if he were to sign for Real Madrid, then that would complete their superstar super team rebuild. It makes perfect sense. Or does it? Do Real Madrid have to change things tactically to fit Mbappe in? And can Real Madrid actually afford him compared to the infinite wealth of Al Hilal? Well, first, let's confirm what Mbappe's amazing at, and that is everything. Everything except defending, of course, but who needs defending when you score all the goals and can dribble past all the people and can create all the chances? And his shot maps tend to look a little something like this. This is just one example from last season for PSG and Ligue1. Lots of shots in high value areas. He's got explosive acceleration and he combines that with incredible movement off the ball. So when he works himself into space, he can find ways to get on the end of through passes that other players simply wouldn't be able to get onto. And then there's tricks, flicks, he can score headers, he can play anywhere across the front. So clearly it makes absolute sense to put him for Real Madrid in this position up front as the central number 9. But there are problems, and they are tactical. We need to look at how Real Madrid play first to kind of understand all of this. Because we know that Ancelotti likes to play a 4-3-3 at Real Madrid. That's what he's done recently, and it looks a bit like this when they push up into attack. Benzema is a central striker. He might drop in a little bit because you get players like Vinicius Jr. or maybe Valverde pushes in behind. These guys come in off the wings like this. Then you've got Kroos might push up. Modric gets to dance around to be the playmaker. And then the key is Dani Carvajal, who pushes up, so you get a front five that looks something like this, with lots of interchanges, lots of movement off the ball. Then the rest of the team pushes up, so it's a 2-3-5 or a 4-3-3. That's how they've been playing. And they're great at keeping possession because they have amazing individual players. You've got players like Kroos and Modric are going to be able to keep the ball through nice close tight play, lots of combinations. But Real Madrid were best in the Champions League in the last few seasons by sitting deep, absorbing pressure because it leaves space in behind. And then when they get their chances on the counter-attack, they are elite players. Benzema, Vinicius, these guys don't miss their chances, and so they have one chance, they're clinical, they take the lead. And you see a combination of both of these skill sets when some teams open up and try and attack them. Say the team attacks in the right here, put the ball into the box or something like that, it's knocked on, it's a transition, then what you get are lots of passes between these players. So say Benzema is here, he's got to be a pivot, he's got to drop in to help with the passing, Modric to him, he goes wide to Bellingham, who he's playing, he might go back to Modric, and then Modric can spot this pass through. So you get this sort of circuit with lots of players being able to move in and out of positions to help release players on the counter-attack. And this striker role is absolutely key because Benzema has to come in to make space for other people. When he drops in, he helps facilitate the passing moves, which then allows Vinicius Jr. to attack wide and go inside to this half space, which is the same one we know Mbappe likes. And so if it wasn't Benzema, if he wasn't there anymore, we'd have Mbappe, and then he would have to be the one who drops in here to offer this sort of passing route so they can get Vinicius Jr. away. But here's the problem. Mbappe wants tactical freedom, and he's spoken about this to the press and asked what the difference is between playing for France and PSG. He said, I play differently, I'm asked other things here in relation to my club. I have a lot more freedom here. That's about France, you see. The coach knows that there is a number 9 like Giroud, plays up top for France, who occupies the defenders, and I can walk around and go into space, a bit like what Messi or Neymar do. And in Paris is different. There isn't that. I am asked to do the pivot. So what does he actually mean by the pivot? Well, for PSG in the past, he's often played as the central striker in a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. And from this sort of central position, he likes to go into the half spaces, the left half spaces where he likes to go. But if he's playing here, there's no one really to combine with up front. You can't play a 1-2 with another striker because there is no one there to play him in. So therefore, he has to make sure he plays the central striker because other people play off of him instead. And this central role is really important up top because it helps push the defense back and create space for others to play in. Because defenders are obviously completely terrified of what Mbappe can do to them by running in behind. And that means that the defensive line goes from being something like this, like against a slow striker, to a bit deeper like this. So you maybe have these two differences in lines because of the speed that Mbappe offers. And so to create that space, Mbappe needs to make these runs constantly, often knowing he won't actually get the ball just because it will force these guys back. And that means that Neymar and Messi could come into these spaces, or Di Maria, whoever's there, and then they can do all the starring role stuff, the fancy little tricks and the flicks and the through balls. They get all the highlights on YouTube. That's what they could do because of the space he was creating. And Mbappe will get in the end of these through balls, sure enough. But the problem is you get far fewer touches of the ball playing in this position and this role than you would say as Neymar and Messi. And a lot of what he's doing is facilitating the stardom of other people. So what you might do is he drops into this space here, rather than running in behind, he might drop in, which then leaves space in behind because these guys push up to go with him for Neymar or Messi to get in behind. So again, they're benefiting from things he's doing off the ball. He's not getting involved on it. And there's a third, more kind of literal definition of this pivot role where he just has to stay here. What you want tactically from the striker is to make sure you create depth. So you want to have this amount of depth to make sure that there's space in between for everyone to play. If you don't have depth, if he's going over here, say, it means that everyone else can squeeze up and you limit the space in between so that there's less space to be able to play and create in these lines. So he just has to stay here, kind of keeping defenders busy rather than actually getting to play with the ball and explode in behind. He's just keeping defenders busy. And Mbappe wants to do more and have tactical freedom to be able to go where he wants to influence the game. But the tactical system always wins. You have to think about what else PSG have. They have the creators in Neymar, Messi and Mbappe. You want to play them all. You have to get them in the same starting lineup. PSG are always dominant in Ligue 1. They're always playing against a team who will sit deep against them and try to counterattack. So they have to find ways to break down teams in this way, which is why Mbappe has to try and push them backwards to create space for the creators. And then behind them, you've got a midfield of kind of worker bees. They're basically really defensive players who can win the ball but aren't great at progressing it and getting it forward. And that is because none of these guys do any defending whatsoever. So if you have 3 players doing no defensive work from the front, you can't play with a high press, which means you need to have defensive players further back. And so Christophe Galtier and everyone else before him who's put Mbappe in this position knows that he won't offer the pressing that you want next to these guys. So you have to have a kind of counter-attack setup in a team that has to play with possession. And to make sure you create space, you then have to have clear tactical rules, which Mbappe has to follow to be able to do what his manager wants him to make the team function. Basically, this is what Mbappe means, I think, when he talks about not wanting to be the pivot player. It's not that he doesn't want to be a centre forward, is that he wants that freedom so he can be more of a complete player. And he gets this freedom when he plays for France because of Olivier Giroud, because France are very tactically disciplined. Didier Deschamps has them locked down with a very rigid kind of system. But Mbappe is the one given the freedom. That's why he enjoys it so much. Griezmann's quite a flair player, but he works very hard out of possession as well. And so what you get is Giroud is the pivot player, so they can launch balls into him. He can control, hold off players, lay it off. And then Mbappe can use his explosive pace to get in behind, to be able to score goals, or he can drift anywhere across his front line. And you can see it in the average touch maps. These are some passing maps from the World Cup. Remember that lovely time? Here is Mbappe playing very much in the left half space. Giroud is the pivot against Australia. You can see this. Griezmann floating along beside him. You get wide players here with the overlapping fullback. And then we go to Denmark. They get in 1-2-1. Again, Mbappe starting on the left with 4-2-3-1. Here's Griezmann and Giroud, very much the pivot. Giroud not involved that much, few touches. We know that happens as the pivot. Griezmann, Mbappe and Dembele, there they go up here. And then we go to Argentina, the final. Mbappe scored a hat-trick, was amazing in that game, very much hugging the left-hand side. And so last season, Christophe Galtier changed the system at PSG a little bit, put a back 3 in, had wing-backs there with a middle 2, and then you had Neymar, Messi and Mbappe. Neymar was injured for quite a lot of it, so what you got instead was a double strike partnership of Messi and Mbappe. And of course, when you have this, then suddenly Mbappe's got a player to play off, so he's not the pivot anymore. He's still a central striker, he still likes playing here, but he can work passes off of Messi to get in behind. He can get more of a dialogue with the wing-backs to get closer to him. There's a lot more he can do, a lot more freedom in this position. And so if we take all that we know now about Mbappe and how he wants to play and put it into Real Madrid, does it still make sense here? Well, sort of yes, because he can make the runs in behind, that will scare defenses and push them backwards. And so then you still have the room for Modric and Bellingham and everyone else to play in behind. And we know that Real Madrid also like to play in transition on the counter-attack, and so therefore you get all the benefits of his explosiveness and his speed and his clever timing of runs. When they're playing against a team who does sit deep, that's when we start seeing the issues, because you've got Vinicius Jr. who wants to attack the same exact bit as Mbappe. But this is actually fine because Benzema used to do this quite a lot. He drifts out into these positions where Vinicius comes inside, because you can then play Mendy as an outside left, as we said, and basically you get all the dovetailing in a triangle around here, linking with Modric, lots of players close together. Because Real Madrid don't play a positional game where one person's stuck on the wing, another person's on the wing, and that creates space for them in a positional way. They tend to play with lots of players close together because then you get nice combinations. It's less rigid than certain other systems. Man City is very rigid and you have to stick to your positions. Real Madrid, you can move, a bit more freedom to move in and out of where you are to create. So they can definitely work together in that sort of system. But also, if Mbappe is just playing as a central striker, as a pivot player, he's playing with a different kind of midfielder behind him. You've got Modric, Bellingham, Kroos. These are all players who can find passes. So if he were to drop in, try and offer a pass, because they're trying to get Vinicius Jr. in behind, what you've got is a player who drops in, then he can link with Modric, and he can go on the outside. Maybe he gets around here like this, slowly. So Vinicius Jr. comes inside to be the central striker. He goes round on a bit of a run round here. Modric can play into Vinicius Jr. Everyone moves forward to try and attack. What you end up getting is Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, all trying to attack the same sort of positions close together for lots of combinations, and that's how you get all your goals. You can kind of do everything he wants to do in this system. And we can kind of see how that would work based on what Benzema was doing for Real Madrid last season, because look, this is his passing map for Real Madrid 1, Liverpool 0. Vinicius Jr., lots of dialogue with Benzema, who's usually pulling out to this left half space. You can see here, left half space, just on the edge of it. Not central striker, not dropping deep like Giroud. He's kind of both an all-round forward and a pivot player at the same time. So what you get is Mbappe moving into these positions he wants to, a bit of tactical freedom, because then he can combine with these amazing players. Modric can pass these balls through, or Bellingham can do the same sort of thing, and you get far more options for Mbappe to make runs and to move where he can influence the game than he would have done at PSG. And the same thing, Mbappe moving out wide here, but the same as what Benzema is doing, to free up other people to do what they want. But the other thing, very exciting, is that Real Madrid are changing their tactics this season, or it looks like it anyway, because in pre-season, they've started using a diamond. So you get this 4 here in more of a diamond rather than the box midfield everyone's using. Brahim Diaz, you can drop in. So you can actually kind of give yourself a 5, so you can play a 5 against a 4, or you've just got the front 2 with this guy here. And of course, if you put in Mbappe, then you've got someone to have dialogue with, to play up top, so you've got that big man, fast man kind of partnership that's so famous. Or what about if you take Joselu out and you put in Vinicius Jr., then you've got an absolutely lethal front 2. Mbappe can go anywhere he wants, they can change at will, cause havoc. It would make absolute sense. There's so many options they'd have with this sort of system if this is what they wanted to do. But how on earth can Real Madrid afford to buy Kylian Mbappe, who'll cost hundreds of millions? Well, we'd have to go through the numbers, wouldn't we? We'd have to have a breakdown of all the finances involved to work out how much Real Madrid really could spend. And guess who's done that?
It's me! Real Madrid have already spent 128 million euros this summer, which is more than all the other La Liga teams combined. So could they even afford Kylian Mbappe right now? Well, Real's finances seem pretty healthy, as they've reported a profit every year for the past 20 years, even during the pandemic. They've also been relatively reasonable in the transfer market in recent years. Just don't look at this. But what about the Bernabeu? Isn't it going to cost like €1 billion to complete? Yes. Real have borrowed 800 million euros from their banking partners for the stadium project. They've also cut a couple of non-economic lever deals for a total of 610 million euros. This means that Real have to repay about 40 million euros to their banking partners every year. They've also had about 27 million euros taken from their sponsorship revenue last year, not to mention the stadium revenue that they would need to hand over for the next 20 years. So how could they possibly afford Mbappe like this? Well, Real Madrid actually have a cash balance of 128 million euros with an additional 265 million euros in undrawn credit facilities, so they can easily meet those payment commitments. They're also expecting the Bernabeu to be fully operational in January 2024, which would significantly increase their revenue. In fact, Professor Sanchez Santos, who's a specialist in the finances of Spanish clubs, says that they can spend over 300 million euros this summer. So even though they've already spent 128 million euros, they should be able to afford a move for Mbappe, even if they have to pay over 100 million euros to PSG. But Professor Angel Brajas reminds us that when you sign a player, you should be less worried about the transfer fee and more about the wages. According to Mbappe's entourage, last year, Real had agreed to pay him 26 million euros per year. Jude Bellingham earns around 10 to 12 million per year. Could they afford all of that now? And what about the La Liga salary cap? Sanchez Santos says that there's no reason for concern on this front, because Real Madrid are almost 50% under their spending limit, which was a whopping 683.5 million euros last season. Add to the fact that more than 50 million euros was just taken off the wage bill, with the likes of Benzema, Hazard, and Marco Asensio leaving. Barajas concludes that even with Bellingham and Arda Güler joining, Real Madrid have gained further salary flexibility compared to last season, which gives them more freedom to make another signing, which could be Mbappe.
It's going to cost lots of money, but we know that Real Madrid will probably find that money if they do want to buy him this summer. But what's important to note is that it's not that Mbappe doesn't want to be a striker, it's that he doesn't want to be a tactically limited central forward who's always involved with pivot play. He wants to be able to have freedom to move tactically where he wants, use his footballing intelligence to affect games that way, and he can do that at Real Madrid. All that has to happen for that to happen first is the exchanging of lots of golden coins as Real Madrid beat Saudi Arabia and all the money they have to buy him. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I think it's very exciting. That's Kylian Mbappe to Real Madrid.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.